Beneath a sky of somber gray, an isolated convent stood, a sanctuary of peace soon to be broken. For centuries, this was a place of quiet devotion, its stone walls echoing with hymns and prayers. But on the horizon, a storm was gathering. The formidable Ottoman army, a sea of steel and ambition, advanced with relentless purpose, their banners a stark contrast against the tranquil landscape. The air, once filled with sacred songs, now trembled with the roar of cannons. Walls that had stood for generations crumbled, and the sanctity of the convent was shattered as soldiers poured through the breach. Inside the chapel, prayers turned to desperate pleas. The nuns, caught between their faith and the grim reality of invasion, faced their captors with a mixture of terror and defiant faith. The final, heartbreaking image is one of captivity. Led away in chains, their sorrowful procession marks the tragic end of an era, a poignant reminder of the countless stories lost to the tides of history. Thanks for watching. In the heart of the 15th century, nestled amidst rolling hills and ancient forests, stood the convent of St. Agnes. For generations, its stone walls had been a sanctuary of peace, a place of quiet contemplation and unwavering faith. Within its hallowed halls, devout women dedicated their lives to prayer, their days marked by the gentle rhythm of chants and the changing of the seasons. The world outside, with its shifting empires and clashing armies, felt distant, almost like a story from another time. The air within the convent was thick with serenity, the scent of old parchment and burning incense a constant comfort. Life was simple, predictable, and sacred. But the winds of change were blowing, carrying with them the distant rumbles of war, and the peaceful existence of the convent was about to be shattered forever. The tranquility of St. Agnes was a fragile illusion. Far to the east, a formidable power was on the march. The Ottoman Empire, under the ambitious Sultan Mehmed II, was expanding its reach, swallowing kingdoms, and redrawing the maps of Europe and Asia. Their armies were a marvel of military engineering and discipline, a force that seemed unstoppable. For the small, isolated Christian states that lay in their path, this advance was a terrifying omen. Rumors, carried by weary travelers and frightened refugees, spoke of cities falling, of battles lost, and of the relentless might of the Sultan's forces. These stories, whispered in the marketplaces and taverns, began to seep into the quiet corners of the land, eventually reaching the very gates of the convent. The nuns, though dedicated to a spiritual life, could not ignore the growing shadow that threatened their world. The first sign of the approaching storm was not a soldier or a banner, but a subtle shift in the air. The usual sounds of the countryside, the birdsong, the rustling leaves were replaced by a low, persistent hum, a vibration felt more in the bones than heard with the ears. Soon, the horizon began to darken, not with clouds, but with a moving mass of men and steel. The Ottoman army had arrived. Their colorful banners, bearing the crescent and star, snapped in the wind, a stark contrast to the gray, anxious sky. From the convent's highest tower, the abbess watched with a heavy heart as the vast encampment spread across the fields below. Thousands of soldiers, endless rows of tents, and the imposing forms of siege engines transformed the once peaceful landscape into a theater of war. The siege had begun. For days, the convent held its breath. The nuns gathered in the chapel, their prayers growing more fervent with each passing hour. They prayed for deliverance, for a miracle, for the hand of God to turn back the tide of invaders. Outside, the Ottoman soldiers methodically prepared their assault. Engineers assessed the convent's defenses, archers took up their positions, and the massive cannons, the pride of the Sultan's army, were maneuvered into place. These were not the simple catapults of old. They were monstrous weapons of bronze and iron, capable of hurling stone balls that could pulverize the thickest walls. The soldiers, veterans of countless campaigns, moved with a quiet, professional efficiency. To them, this small, fortified convent was just another obstacle to be overcome, another piece on the grand chessboard of empire. Then came the roar. The ground shook as the first cannon fired, its deafening blast echoing through the valley. A massive stone projectile screamed through the air and slammed into the ancient convent wall, sending a shower of stone and dust into the courtyard. Panic erupted within. The solid walls that had seemed so permanent, so unbreachable, were now proving to be terrifyingly vulnerable. Another blast followed, and another. The rhythmic, thunderous bombardment was relentless, a percussive soundtrack to the unfolding nightmare. Cracks spider-webbed across the masonry, and soon, a section of the outer wall, a structure that had stood for centuries, crumbled into a pile of rubble. The breach was made. The heart of the sanctuary was now exposed. With a unified war cry that chilled the soul, the Ottoman soldiers charged through the newly created opening. They poured into the convent grounds like a flood, their scimitars glinting in the dim light. The small contingent of local guards, tasked with protecting the convent, fought with desperate courage, but were quickly overwhelmed by the sheer numbers and superior skill of the attackers. The sounds of battle, the clash of steel, the shouts of men, the cries of the wounded filled the air, profaning the sacred silence of the monastery. The soldiers moved with ruthless purpose, spreading through the cloisters, the library, and the gardens, their armored boots stamping on holy ground. The sanctuary had been violated. The last refuge for the nuns was the chapel. They huddled together before the altar, their white-knuckled hands clutching rosaries and crosses. Their voices, though trembling with fear, rose in a final defiant hymn, a testament to their unbroken faith in the face of utter despair. The heavy chapel doors burst open, and the Ottoman soldiers stormed in. For a moment, the two worlds collided. The soldiers, their faces grim and hardened by battle, paused, momentarily taken aback by the scene of collective prayer. But the pause was fleeting. The logic of war reasserted itself. Orders were barked, and the soldiers moved forward to seize their captives. The nuns did not struggle. Their resistance was one of the spirit, not of the body. As rough hands grabbed their arms, their eyes remained fixed on the cross, their lips moving in silent prayer. One young nun, her face a mask of sorrow but her gaze steady, met the eyes of the soldier who bound her wrists. In that fleeting connection, there was no hatred, only a profound, bottomless tragedy, a collision of faiths, empires, and human destinies. One by one, the women of St. Agnes, from the elderly abbess to the youngest novice, were led from the chapel. Their song was silenced, replaced by the clinking of chains and the gruff commands of their captors. The procession of the captured was a somber spectacle. Chained together, the nuns were marched out of the ruined convent, past the bodies of its fallen defenders, and through the breach in its walls. They were led through the sprawling Ottoman camp, a humiliating parade before the victorious army. They walked with their heads held high, their dignity a shield against the jeers and stares. Their black and white habits were now stained with dust and tears, symbols of a shattered world. As they were led away, their destination unknown, the setting sun cast long, dark shadows, seeming to mourn the tragedy that had unfolded. The smoke from the smoldering ruins of the convent rose into the evening sky, a final, sorrowful pyre for a lost sanctuary. The fall of the convent of St. Agnes was a small event in the grand sweep of the Ottoman conquest, a mere footnote in the annals of a sprawling empire. But for those who lived and died there, it was the end of everything. This story, and countless others like it, are reminders of the immense human cost of conflict, of the way great historical movements can devastate small, peaceful communities. It's a testament to the clash of civilizations, where faith, culture, and lives are caught in the crossfire of ambition and power. The memory of these captured nuns, marching in chains away from their ruined home, serves as a powerful, somber image of loss and a tribute to the resilience of the human spirit even in the darkest of times. Thank you for watching. If this story moved you, please consider liking this video and subscribing for more explorations into the forgotten corners of history.